Hi, George Durkee, week 2, lesson 8 of Geography 66, creating a web map using ArcGIS Online. And in this lesson, we'll use Survey123, an app, to collect data in the field or to crowdsource using an online map. So what we're doing is we're going to create a form to post, either, like I said, on a map, or it can be downloaded onto a phone or accessed from a phone and filled out, and the data kept track of on your college account. So, for instance, a couple of years ago, the Tween Heart fire horn alert signal was revived, and we wanted to see how far it carried uh, to use as a possible emergency siren during a fire or other disaster where people had to uh, pay attention and check with a radio station or the Tuolumne County Emergency Services Office to see if there was an evacuation order or something. So the horn was going to be tested, and so I designed a form to find out how far people could hear it from the firehouse in Tweenhart. And so it was a pretty straightforward form, the date and time. Did you hear the horn? Yes, no. And I even specified that even if you didn't hear it, I wanted that location known and to report that. And then how loud was it? And kind of practical here. So it was very loud, would have woken me up in an emergency. Loud, probably would have woken me up, et cetera, et cetera. Faint or other, they could fill in their own answer. And then they would pinpoint their location on a map and hit enter and send it in. So then we mapped all the responses. We got about 75 of them, and all of the people who could hear it are in green. The ones who did not hear it are the red triangles, and marked the firehouse there, which was the origin of the horn. Uh, Incidentally, this was the same horn used decades ago for the volunteer fire department. So there would be so many blasts to give a location to respond to for the volunteers for various corners or street corners around Twainhart. So it was a bit of an effort to get it working again. Anyway, I also used ArcGIS Pro and an app that predicted sound travel, which was a serious pain to use, but it also predicted, given a known decibel level of the horn and a height above ground and the terrain, whether trees or open fields or whatever, and it could predict roughly how far that sound would carry and at what decibel level. And you'll notice it was reasonably accurate. The red here is where the prediction was of the horn to be loudest, and then decrease as you get farther out and away from the source here. So the yellows are a bunch of decibels lower in prediction, and you still have pockets here of red where the terrain and the vegetation might enhance a horn. And you can see that's borne out here by the actual reports from people. Anyway, to start our Survey123 form, you go anywhere you are in your college app, college online account, and go up here to the drop down for your apps and choose Survey123. Now, it may be located somewhere down here, but you can drag it up here because, of course, you'll be using it a couple of times, and just click on that. And unless you created other surveys, yours will be a blank screen with no previous surveys. I've done a few, uh, and I'll just point out one or two in addition to the Firehorn survey. Uh, Try and use GIS for community involvement. I think maps and data can help out the community. So, for instance, there were power outages a few years ago that lasted like a week, and we'd get several of them in a row, which was a little annoying. But some businesses were open because they had generators, or even they somehow had power still running to their business. So it seemed useful to have people self-report, crowdsource whether they were open or not, and then we could locate it on a map, so people could find businesses that were still open, and other stuff I've done here over the years. But in any event, we are going to start a new survey. So obviously, click on New Survey. And you have several choices here. You have Survey123 Connect, which is uh, the more advanced app builder, survey builder. And that's the one that runs with Excel. We have a template survey, and these are existing templates you can just use. They just have the schema, the questions or fill-in forms or whatever already existing, and it's all done for you. And you can even add stuff to them and customize them. So, for instance, useful things or incident reports, uh, pothole locations. That's a pretty useful one. And Anyway, other on this sort of report road emergency, down trees, all sorts of things. So consider those. And then also brings up the point for this lesson and this assignment. If you have a project you're doing in another class or a specific interest, uh, feel free to do that. The workflow for creating a survey is pretty straightforward and I think easy to pick up. So if you guys just watch the videos and adapt it to your own project, that's fine. I'm good with anything you guys come up with. But we're going to go back and we're going to do a blank survey. And that brings us to the design part of Survey 123, where we'll design our form. And before doing this, you really want to put your ideas on paper and do a draft of the form on paper. And if you're doing it as part of a group, get input from others in your group. And as a part of any design of a map, uh, you want to visualize or imagine what it is you might find out or how you want to present it. And so what data would help you do that? And so what questions would help uh, uh, show that? And so you design your questions accordingly, and you'll see that you have some features, some tools here where you can direct people to kind of standardized uh, answers that will help you analyze the data set. And also, while we're here, uh, take a look at uh, the ARC GIS Survey 123 webpage, and there's a little video down here that will give a little bit a short overview. That's worth watching. And in addition, it also gives you the option of downloading the Excel based more advanced Survey 123. Okay, let's get started designing our form. So all you have to do is drag and drop. So single line text, multi-line text. Uh, what I'll want you guys to do in addition to designing a form is just go through most all of these. You can drag them in and just to see what they do and then X them out. There'll be a little delete option on the feature. So let's drag in a single line text. And over here on the right, you'll notice the label, what it's going to say. And so let's just say name. And you can go, I don't know, last name, first name. And then you can always break that out into a database and divide them up if you want to. And if you scroll down, you'll notice you can give a default value. Well, for a name, we don't want to do that. But you probably do want to make this a required question on something you may want to follow up on. Uh, People often don't like leaving their names, but I did a database analysis some years ago for Yosemite and Sequoia Kings, and there were tens of thousands of records going back to the late 1800s. And for more recent observations, there were names there, and where we needed more information, such as a endangered species, such as or a rare species, such as a wolverine or bighorn sheep or something, and we'd want a better location or description. I actually knew a lot of these people, even going back 30, 40 years, and could contact them and hope that they remembered the observation, which quite often they did. So now let's go back to add, and let's add a date. And the first one will be, we'll have two dates here. Date of submission. So that's just today's date, and we can say submitting date, and that'll fill in the default value for the date. And that's when they fill out the form, and well, we'll make it required, and then we'll add a second date, and that'll be date of observation of observation, and then down here into the hint, when did you see the critter, question mark. And we won't give a default value there. And then you could, well, you could do other things with it. But this is also a required question. Back to add. And let's put in a multi-line text. So this gives you a lot more room, almost, a paragraph or however many characters you decide. And let's make this describe the animal. And so size, color, sex, whatever. And then you can give a minimum or a maximum number of characters. So you don't want it to get too far out of hand. So you could limit it to 100, 200 characters. And obviously we're just doing this pretty quickly here because I just want you guys, again, to get an idea of how to organize and create this. And let's scroll up again. So notice we could have done date and time, but the hour of the day is not necessarily important, or just time, or we could have put in a format for an email address. So those are other options you can use. Now let's try a drop down, and let's put that in. I'll show you how to work that. So a drop down is, let's just say species choices, and that'll be choose species from drop down. And the advantage of this, or radio buttons, is another option for choosing things, is that let's put in bear and I don't know, raccoon and skunk. And you can add more. more drop downs using the plus sign here. But I'm just, once again demonstrating. And we allow other, so they can have other than bear, raccoon, or skunk. And the advantage of that is that you standardize the spelling so that if you later are filtering or doing any level of analysis where you want to see how many bears or raccoons or whatever have been reported, so if you spell it correctly, with one C, then you'll get all the one C answers. But if people spell it with, I don't know, two N's or something like that, or two C's, you won't pick those up in the analysis. So doing a drop down standardizes the answers, so you always get the same answer each time in a consistent way. Though for a wildlife observation, that might be a little difficult because you might have to have a long drop down. But there's nothing in the form that prevents that. So you could just put the common animals there. Or again, uh, whatever your form is after, just keep that in mind. And go on down. We'll make this a required question. It could autocomplete, but it we don't have the choices for autocomplete at the moment. Okay, so back to add yet again, and let's do multi-line. We may not need a multi-line on this, but let's do where did you see it? So give location by feature name and specifics, e.g. on north side of lake. So that gives them a text option to narrow it down a little bit. This should be required, but let's also set a maximum here of, let's just, so they don't get too carried away, let's give them 300 characters. And let's go to add. And now we'll give them a map to work with for location. You can also have them enter an address, but you can do that on the map as well. So let's just put in a map. And we can choose the map specifically. So right now it's set at topographic, but if we go to edit, we can actually choose, for instance, a satellite image or whatever, but I kind of prefer the topo map, so let's go with that. And you also want to describe how to work the map because it's not immediately obvious. So in this case, you'll see that click on map to establish point. And I'll show you how that works because you might think of a different description that would work. And you can do it point, line, polygon. We just want a point, but it could be an area. Might be more descriptive for you. And we do want to center the map in the extent of where we want it. So in this case, let's go to Tuolumne County, California. And let's zoom in. And let's have the map default to that area. Obviously they can zoom in and out and get to a different area, and maybe you want all of California. Let's go out a click here. There we go. That's a little better. And you can do other things like use the device location or ask for location when you answer the question. So that's useful. And or you can use the device location when opening the survey in the first place. So both of those are useful. Experiment with those, but I'm going to keep it just as this, and it's a required question. Okay, so that was pretty quick. There may be other questions that you might think of, but for the moment, let's stick with that. And again, for designing the form, I just want you guys to add other stuff, and I'll just quickly. So for instance, you have a what's called a Likert scale. We'll just put it in here temporarily. So you can ask a question, strongly disagree, strongly agree. So you have a lot of options here on what to do. So again, if you guys are going to do your own forms for your own project, get used to what's available. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what we want to do here? We do want to put in an image. So let's put that here, describe the animal. It should probably, and you can move these, so we might want to move it one down. So that's an image. Highlight that again to get to the edit. Oops. Uh, there we go. So this will be optional because they may not have a photo. So photo question mark, upload, upload or take photo with camera. And so where the options are going to be browse images or use camera. And it's not required because they may not have one. Specify they can upload up to 3 photos, say, and it's limited at the moment to 10 meg. And you guys may want to experiment around. Cameras are just getting larger and larger file sizes, so you probably have a better idea of what file sizes are available now. So you might have to fool around with that one. And let's save. Should have saved earlier. You want to save as you go. And another point here is that when you get where you're pretty much finished, you might want to save as, because once you publish, you can't really change it. So the odds are that once you design it, you'll send it out to friends or you'll send it out as a test beta, um, and decide some tweaks you want to do. Uh, and so if that's the case, you go back to your save as uh, uh, form and then continue edits and changes on that one and then publish that one. So now let's go to appearance. And here's where you can add, for instance, a background or add your own custom image background. If we were doing fire, if you'll remember in the last week's lesson, I added a photo of a fire there. So if you're doing something with that, or whatever theme from an existing survey, or you can add your logo for your agency or company. And I don't know, let's put in a theme, mountain scene there. Although if we're working in Tuolumne County, you might well want a Tuolumne County background. So that's preview. Let's take a look here, see what we have. So there we go. This is our first draft, and as I've repeated a couple of times here, this may not be what we want, but here's your drop down, for instance, and describe the animal. And then we get down to our map, and here's where click on map to establish point. So you'd click, and the mark moves to where you click. So I think that's a fairly good description of what you need to do, but you might need to improve on that. And that's what I mean by testing it with people to see if that's easily understood. Okay, so let's pretend that looks good, and we'll X out of that. Now let's go to some other options here. And so once it's submitted, once they go down to the submit button here, this is what comes up. Thank you, your response was submitted successfully. And then we have a couple more options here. So you might give an option, especially on a wildlife form. They might have other critters to report. So show the option to reload the survey rather than have to go to the URL again. And they may want to, you may want to redirect them to a URL. And so, I'll put in a plug for what's called inaturalist.org. It's a huge worldwide site where uh, critters are crowdsourced from everywhere. Photos where they're available. It's got its own form for submitting, and it's really a great site. Most of the sightings, of course, come from the U.S., but they do come from all over the world. Anyway, if you're all interested in critters, consider looking up that site and participating there. And then you also have the option of putting in other languages. Esri has gotten pretty good about translating all of their content into other languages, and you can choose specific languages to do that in. Okay, so we'll save again, and now let's publish. And it gives you another chance to think about it here. Um, but you can go back to modify the schema, for instance. And are you sure you want to publish this? Yes, let's do it. And this takes a little while, but just have a cup of coffee or something. And now we've published successfully, and the share button now becomes active. So we can, this can be a standalone, so that if you send out the URL that we can get from the share button here, you can just send that out. And that's what I did to the Firehorn test is people could download that either onto their desktop or onto their phone and fill out the survey, submit, and send it in to the college's data set. So let's try that and see what it looks like. So it creates a short URL and copy the link, or you can do a QR code, which is also pretty useful. And let's copy and paste, and copy and go, paste and go, and see what it looks like. Okay, there we are. Did not do a survey title or a description. So let's go back and do that and scroll up. And so you click on that, we go into edit, and we can choose text or image. And let's call this wildlife survey for Tuolumne County. But you can also put in an image, and you can, align that center. Let's center it. And next, let's do a description. So I don't know, add wildlife sightings. And let's save that. Now let's publish again. Now the key here is to make any changes before you have this thing go live. So if you make changes after it's gone live and after people have been filling things in, so for instance, adding data for data fields and so on, then it'll change your data and your analysis potential. So you want to work the kinks out. And so that's also why I said, have a save as form, which means you can kind of go back and forth and figure out what you really want. So let's publish. And there we go. And at the risk of repeating myself, you guys can do this form as I demoed and that's fine. That works. And add stuff or don't add stuff as you want to customize it to your own needs, and or um, do something you're already interested in, and using, of course, the same workflow. So I think that does it for this video. In the next one, I'll show you how to incorporate this into a map. So thanks.